immigrant visa applicants from Afghanistan. The general inquiry on the proposed temporary housing is in accordance with the powers and jurisdiction of the Committee on Foreign Relations under Rule 10, Section 13, Paragraph 18 of the Rules of the Senate in relation to Senate Resolution 5, otherwise known as the Rules of Procedure governing inquiries in aid of legislation. The minority leader is an expert on Senate procedure, and I just wanted to make clear why we are conducting motu proprio a hearing during the period of recess. During the given the urgency and the importance of the matter, I feel that we fall squarely under rule aforementioned. So, if I may then call on the Legislative Committee Secretary to administer the oath to the resource persons, unless the minority leader would like to make a comment or Senator Jinggoy would have an opening statement. Thank you.
Madam Chairperson, congratulations and thank you for holding this hearing so that we will get to know more about this issue. So we are doing this in accordance with our rules, and I will just be here to represent the minority and to listen and observe, Madam Chairperson. So thank you.
Thank you, Minority Leader. Senator Estrada, I see you on video. Is there an opening statement, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, to our chairperson, Senator Amy Marcos, distinguished colleagues in the Senate, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to everybody. I laud the chairperson of this committee for bringing the public's attention that this very important subject and for immediately calling for this hearing that we hope will clarify many of our concerns with regard to allowing Afghan nationals into our country at the request of the United States. On the provision of temporary housing for foreign nationals, we are facing a housing backlog of around 6.5 million in our own backyard. Shouldn't we prioritize the needs of our fellow men first? Given our housing backlog and the rise in cost of living, shouldn't our limited resources be focused on taking care of our own? What is the fiscal implication of providing temporary housing to these foreign nationals? Will we be shouldering subsistence costs as well? These are just preliminary questions that I have in mind, Madam Chairperson. And at the appropriate time, I will be asking a few more. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, the chairman of our Defense Committee here in the Senate, Jinggoy Estrada. And with that, we establish the chronological order as we understand it for the concise and orderly narration of facts. In a news article by the Philippine news agency, Ambassador Romualdez confirmed that the U.S. made a request sometime in October of 2022 for the Philippines to temporarily house the Afghan special immigrant visa applicants. Ambassador Romualdez, you maintained that there was no secret to the U.S. proposal to allow the entry and temporary housing of the nationals from Afghanistan. May we know how the request was made? Was it merely a verbal order, or is there a written request that can be produced for the committee and the public to know?
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to everyone. Yes, there was a formal request that we received at the embassy, and I hope that we will be able to produce that request. But it was also followed up with us through the State Department whether this is possible for us to consider. And so we immediately sent this request to the Department of Foreign Affairs, and the Secretary and I spoke about it briefly, and he said that he was going to have this studied before any action could be taken. But that is what happened when we received this in October last year.
Yes, Secretary Manalo, please. The information, therefore, from Washington, D.C. Embassy is that the DFA actually was in receipt of a formal request. Is that the case?
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair.
Good afternoon, Secretary. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Yes, in October 22, as relayed by Ambassador Romualdez, we received in a concept note from the U.S. government, a request for the Philippines to allow Afghans formerly employed.
What sort of note, please, Secretary?
Concept note.
Concept note, okay. But it was written, in fact.
Yes, written. And the idea was to allow Afghans formerly employed by the U.S. government and their qualified dependents to temporarily stay in the Philippines to process their SIV applications with the U.S. Embassy in Manila. So we immediately launched informal consultation. We launched consultations with the relevant Philippine agencies in order to have to study the concept note and assess the request.
The ambassador says that thereafter the State Department also reiterated the request directly to the DFA. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair. In fact, the Secretary of State directly raised this with me on a few occasions, verbally, and also in a letter, which I'd be happy to provide later. And in fact, President Biden also briefly raised the issue with President Marcos during the visit last May.
This is during the May visit. Sir.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. When was the DOJ, the DND, the NSA, perhaps we can go through the list. When were you made aware of the request of the U.S.? We call on the DOJ, please. I think there are several representatives. When were you apprised of the request? Anyone from the DOJ was informed at any point in time? The DND? When were you made aware of the request?
Madam Chair, insofar as our records are concerned, when it was in December of 2022.
Was it from the DFA, from Washington, or from the State Department direct?
From the DFA, Madam Chair.
From the DFA. Is this a letter?
I will find out, Madam Chair. I would suppose it would have been written merely through meetings, according to Assistant Secretary Lorenzo. Merely through convening of meetings, Madam Chair.
Meetings?
Yes.
The convening of meetings, are these the June meetings? The earlier June meetings? Or is this an earlier occurrence?
No, Your Honor, it was December of last year.
December pa yung meeting?
Yes, Your Honor.
Sige. Okay, paano yung DOJ? Kailan ninyo nabalitaan itong request na to?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I was reminded by Secretary Manalo that it was October of last year.
As early as
they
October.
Convened. Yes, Madam Chair.
Was that a meeting or referral of the said request? Secretary Manalo, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In fact, it was informal. It was an interagency. And in fact, if I could just read off the agencies who were there.
Yes, if you could, thank you.
Yes, the meeting that we had called for was attended by representatives from, of course, the DFA, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Department of Justice, Department of National Defense, and the National Intelligence Coordinating Council, and the Philippine National Police. This was on October 28th.
So it is correct, therefore, does the DOJ corroborate the same, that you were formally called to a meeting by the DFA on October of last year, together with the rest of the agencies?
We confirm, Madam Chair, that there was such a interagency meeting of which the DOJ was a part of.
Thank you. So does NICA have the same in their records, please?
Madam Chair, as far as NICA is concerned, this was discussed formally last 20th ATC conference, 26th of April 2023. And
so as far as NICA was concerned, you were only told in April?
This was discussed 26th April 20th of the ATC, Anti-Terrorism Council.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you properly.
NICA is the secretariat of the Anti-Terrorism Council, and this was formally discussed before the body. chaired by E.S. Bersamin, and that
When?
was 26 of April 2023.
Only in 2023. Hindi kayo kasama doon sa October and December. Is that correct? Okay, what about the BI? Immigration, please. Kailan kayo nasabihan?
As far as BI is concerned, ma'am, we only attended the June 2, 2023 interagency meeting. It was the first time that our presence was requested.
Right. That's the same as our information. Is there anyone from Muslim Affairs and DepEd? They were similarly called, the ICT, the OST, is that correct? Yes, Attorney Guro.
Yes, Madam Chair. As far as the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos, we were only informed also of a notice of a meeting. So we were invited to the June 7 meeting.
Okay. Anyone from DepEd?
Good
Kailan kayo
afternoon, Madam Chair.
nakapila?
Kami po, I confirm that we also attended the June 7 meeting.
We were required to submit our comments and inputs.
So magkasabay kayo ng NICA?
Yes, ma'am. And then we attended the meeting last June 7
Yeah.
at the Presidential Management Staff.
Magkakapareho kayo.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? PNP? Nasabihan ba kayo kagad?
Yes, ma'am. For the Philippine National Police, we received an email as October 24, 2022.
I see. And I see Mr. Libardo raising his hand there.
Madam Chair, from the National Security Council, Deputy Director General Nestor Jerico, we received a departmental level from the DFA, from Undersecretary for Civilian Security and Consular Affairs, dated 2 November 2022. And we reply when we replied their departmental letter as of 15 November 2022, Madam Chair.
Okay. Since you were informed through the DFA, but was any of you furnished a copy of the U.S. request? If so, when did you receive said copy of the U.S. request? Secretary Manalo, was there a U.S. request? You said there was. Is that correct? You said that there was a formal request, as a matter of fact?
It
You
was
said earlier? Is that
a
correct?
formal request in the form of a concept note.
Yes. So was the concept note then cascaded to all the relevant agencies like the DND, the DOJ, etc.? Or did you keep it confidential?
Initially, once we got it, we just informed the agencies who I'd mentioned, the DOJ, DND, NICA, Philippine National.
Informed means you told them, but did not provide a copy of the concept letter. Is that correct?
We did. We invited them to a meeting, and in fact, the general consensus.
But he seems to be ignorant of the other resource persons seem to be ignorant of the existence of a concept.
Well,
no?
we did not invite them yet because we didn't know who would exactly be involved. But from our initial assessment, we thought the one.
So the concept note was given to whom, please?
To the
DND lang, DFA lang at DND yan. Yung sa umpisa,
we gave it
yung
to
October.
we gave it to the agencies whom we invited. In fact,
sino-sino po? But so far, DND seems to be the only one who've been invited on in 20.
AFP, PNP.
Come again. Can we start? DND, AFP, PNP,
NICA, and then those were the four we had invited initially.
Okay.
And DOJ.
DOJ. Can these 5 agencies confirm the receipt of said concept note from the United States?
Madam Chair, insofar as our records are concerned, I confirm receipt by our Assistant Secretary for Strategic Assessment and International Affairs on 21 October.
On October?
Yes, ma'am. A letter from the DFA which there to attach a proposal for bilateral cooperation to support the processing of Afghan special.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much from the Secretary. DOJ?
We confirm, Madam Chair, that we were also in receipt of the concept note.
In October?
In October.
Okay. AFP and PNP as well as NICA. Kanina sinabi niyo, Abril na lang kayo nasabihan. Meron ba? Wala. Kanina kasi, ang pagkasabi, April 26, 2023 was the first notion you had during the meeting of the Anti-Terror Council. Did you or
I
did you not? Did
confirm
you
that.
receive?
Madam Chair, I will confirm that it was discussed last 26 April, but I was checking on the record that we received a notice from NSA 30 March of 2023.
March 2023. So you never received the U.S. concept note?
It was a letter coming from our NSA, not a concept note.
No concept note. So there seems to be some discrepancy in the transmission. The three agencies, AFP and PNP, similarly received it later in the day, right?
Ma'am, for the PNP, we received it on October 24, 2022.
Oh, kanina sabi mo Marso na, Abril.
No, ma'am, October 24, 2022.
Oh, okay. Kanina iba kasi eh. Alright, yung AFP.
Good afternoon, ma'am. From the AFP,
Okay.
we received the memo from the DND dated 25 October. So,
Okay.
yes, ma'am. Of 2022.
So DND, but no concept note?
Request for comments lang po, ma'am, ang ni-request sa amin.
No concept. So both the AFP, the PNP, and the NICA. No, sorry. Both the AFP and the NICA did not receive the concept note. In fact, that's correct, because the PNP now says that they actually received it. Pero yung AFP wala, o baka nakakabit dyan, naka-annex. Baka naka-annex lang yan. Nakakabit. So AFP in fact got it. Yung NICA did not get it. Still, Dick, parang wala.
I'm checking my record,
All right.
Madam Chair.
That's fine. Yes, and we recognize Senator Tolentino. You're encouraged to butt in at any point in time. Of course, this is not usual business at all. But prior to the resolution filed by myself on June 8th, was there any press release on the part of the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C., the DFA, or any other government agency concerning the request of the United States and the course of action that the government plans to take, the Philippine government plans to take? Nag-anunsyo na kayo, nag-press release, o pinag-usapan na ba to in any public forum at all?
No, Madam Chair, because we were still consulting and trying to assess the implications of this proposal. So nothing was final in that sense, because we were still trying to collate all the views. And if I could just mention that after some consultations with the interagency, it was decided to raise it to a higher level in April. And this was when we went to the Anti-Terrorism Council. That was the one in April. And because we felt it should be now considered at a slightly higher level than the technical working level. Then I think the ATC, if I recall correctly, then recommended it be elevated to cabinet level for further consideration. So we tried to follow all the steps by first consulting all the agencies. And in fact, I could give later a list of the representatives, at least at the October meeting. And in fact, the purpose of that meeting was to discuss the concept note of provided by the United States and to give preliminary observations. And then we proceeded to hold a few more interagency meetings on it to collate the observations of the various agencies. And when we reached the point in April, we had enough of these observations. We decided it's time now to raise it to the higher level, or the ATC, in April, I think.
Thank you. We appreciate your prudence and determination to raise it to as high a level as possible, because until this moment, the terms of the proposal and request of the United States are still shrouded in mystery as far as the public as well as the Senate is concerned. Are you free to share with us some of the terms of said request, even only in the concept note? And we have here Senator Tolentino, I think, who's
to butt in, Madam Chair.
also...
Are we referring to the same IAC created by virtue of EO 163? Is this the same?
Oh, no. That's the old one of President Duterte.
So we have a new one.
No, not yet.
Because this was circa 2022.
Yes.
Nabago na ba yan?
Wala pa. That's
So,
from
iba yun,
President Duterte.
I had mentioned the, Mr. Senator,
late, I'm sorry, I'm late.
the ATC, the Anti-Terrorism
Okay.
Council.
Yes.
This-
Senator Tolentino, what we're trying to determine is how the request was made from the United States. And apparently a concept note was provided by Ambassador Romualdez, forwarded to the DFA, reiterated thereafter by the State Department, and thereafter cascaded to a number of agencies. Not all of the agencies thereafter involved, but some of the primary cabinet level ones were already informed. However, in the interest of transparency, are you able to share with us how many Afghan nationals in total primordial concern? Secretary Manalo, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, we have not gone into that kind of detail in our informal consultations with the United States, because they have come back now and again over the past few months to provide to discuss some of the issues involved. All I can say at this point, and I say that because there's really nothing agreed yet, but it seems that there is the possibility, if we were able to have any kind of arrangement, we would be having perhaps a pilot group, maybe a limited number. Now, we haven't even discussed that number yet. To first, we could first see how that pilot group would work, and then we would decide on how to proceed after that. But we have not gone beyond that issue, other than to say we might have a pilot group. But what I can say are the following, and these appear in the concept note and also after further informal talks with the United States. We understand from the U.S. that all Afghans who will be traveling with valid passports and will have already, before they were to arrive, if they were to arrive here, would already have undergone rigorous security vetting and background checks to verify that they have indeed previously worked for the U.S. government, because these will be Afghans who had worked before with the U.S. government, shouldered by the United States government. Also, the United States would, with Philippine officials, try and select a suitable site where they could be located while they are being processed or vetted. It would, of course, be up to the Philippines. We also mentioned that to them, that if any arrangement, it would be up to the Philippines to impose mobility restrictions and internal movements within the Philippines. The U.S. also committed to us that in the event there are Afghans who come here for processing, that no one would be left behind in the Philippines. And that includes even those who may be
in various reports. Perhaps Ambassador Romualdez, you could help us. There are reports that upwards of 1,000 eligible Afghan nationals per month would be sent, maybe 1,005 to 2,000 per batch, reaching a total of 30 to 50,000 Afghan nationals to arrive in the Philippines under this effort. Is that correct, Ambassador Romualdez?
Yes, Madam Chair, that is what they were telling us, that they would like to see if they can bring in at least 1,000 per batch. However, I just want to point out that it is really completely.
Does it mean per batch, per month? And the second batch will not come in until the first batch of 1,000 has departed and been processed to go to the United States? Or will there be 30 to 50,000 total Afghans in the Philippines at one time?
It's completely up to us on how we want to proceed with this request. We can have it 1,000 each time, and they will be repatriated to the United States once they receive their SIVs, or they will bring in perhaps 1,000 or 2,000. It depends on the kind of boarding or lodging that they will provide, which all of these they will be at their expense.
Yes, thank you. I would like to call on Senator Coco Pimentel, who has been raising his hand.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. May I ask, where are these potential Afghan refugees right now?
Ambassador Romualdez.
Yes, from the way I understand it, they are currently located either still in Afghanistan, perhaps some of the family members of this people who worked in the United States with the United States government. But the last conversation I had with the State Department is that some of them are in Pakistan at the moment.
So thank you for that point of information, Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Tolentino, please.
Ambassador Valdez, a few questions. You're willing to answer some. Aside from the United States, there are existing similar SIV programs right now. We have one in Canada, the Special Immigration Measure. We have one in Germany, also applicable to the Afghans. The United Kingdom has the Afghan Relocations and Assistance Policy, or ARAP. Australia has a program known as the Afghan Locally Engaged Employees, or LEEE. Aside from the United States, were there requests coming from the other countries I mentioned a while ago?
Not to us, not that I know of.
But you are aware of the several programs I mentioned a while ago?
Yes, they pointed it out to us that there are programs of other countries similar to what they were requesting.
And if you're familiar with these programs, these are short-term, temporary programs that would entail the processing of Afghans displaced prior to their relocation, for instance, to Australia, United Kingdom, Germany, Canada. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct, Senator.
So ang mangyayari po sa atin, temporary site controlled by the Philippines, as mentioned by Secretary Manalo, perhaps a site with proper security measures, and perhaps a site funded by the United States. And is the United Nations involved, Mr. Ambassador?
I'm not sure. Perhaps Secretary Manalo could. I don't think the United Nations is involved in this.
Madam Chair, the reason why I'm mentioning this is that as we speak, there are 29 to 33 Filipinos still in Kabul right now, working for various NGOs. We have, correct me if I'm wrong, Secretary Manalo, we have accepted a similar number of Syrian refugees. And during the past decades, we accepted several East Timor refugees. And if hindi pa ako buhay, during the time of President Quezon, syempre po, libo-libo po yung Russian Jews. So the question of distance probably is inapplicable right now. And during the time of President Marcos, we have the South Vietnamese being stationed temporarily in Palawan. So, Mr. Ambassador, kung sakali pong pumunta rito yung Afghans, ang kinakatakutan po kasi ng marami, parang nagkaroon ng stereotyping na, suicide bombers ito. Ito po ba mga edukado? Ito po ba mga kababaihan? Ito po ba binubuo ng pamilya na naiwan? Hindi po ito yung mga nakasabit sa aeroplano. Ito po yung naiwan doon dahil nagtrabaho sa mga embassies. Tama po ba?
Tama. Hindi, all of them, lahat sila nagtrabaho for the US government in one way or the other. At saka yung kanilang mga pamilya. Kaya it's anywhere between 50 to 60,000 that are still being processed for repatriation to the United States.
And you're perhaps aware, Mr. Ambassador, that we are a signatory to countless international agreements.
Yes.
That should allow us to accept these Afghans in our soil. Tama po ba yun?
That's correct, Senator.
And are you aware of this? I hope my pronunciation is right. I haven't been to France yet, Madam Chair. Refoulement would mean the return of a refugee to his or her former state against his will, where he will be more threatened by, in this case, the Taliban. So, pag yung nakarating po sa atin, nagdili-dali tayo, pinabalik, marami ho tayong violation. Tama po ba yun, Ambassador?
Yan, hindi ko sigurado yan. Pero ang alam ko lang, the United States government has assured us that whoever that we will allow to come into the Philippines for processing, they will take care of them completely. In other words, if they are for some reason denied the SIV that the processing will take place, they will be immediately sent to another or a third country.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. One last point, Madam Chair. Secretary Manalo, correct me if I'm wrong. My data was prepared several weeks ago. More than 90,000 Afghans have been resettled across the United States over the past 20 months. More than 11,000 SIVs were issued to Afghans between October 2021 and September 2022, according to official figures. Tama po ba yan?
I cannot confirm, Mr. Senator.
Yes. Kung sakaling yung tama yung binabanggit niya na 50,000, 1,000, mapapasama tayo rito sa figures na to. Kung dito ipoprocess to. At the rate they're going, 11,000, halos isang taon, 90,000 na relocate. May posibilidad ba ho, Mr. Ambassador, na bumagal dahil nandito, natambak sa atin? Meron ba hong ganun posibilidad? O nagmana kayo sa tanong ko?
Hindi, nasa sa atin na yun, Senator, na kung ilan ang gusto natin. Pero ang request nila is anywhere between 1,000 to 1,500 per batch. Ipoprocess nila, then they will go to the United States. Kung gusto natin less, pwede rin. Ang tinatanong na sa atin is exactly yung kanilang tinatanong o rini-request sa atin, what is it that we will be able to get back to them that we can accept? In other words, not all of this 30,000 or whatever it is they intend to process will come to the Philippines, and then they will be here and they will wait for their processing. It will be by batches.
Definitely, Mr.
And it's completely up to us.
Mr. Ambassador, narami ho nakikinig ngayon. Definitely, the Philippines will not be the final destination of these refugees.
Yes, that is
temporary lang po sila dito. Ang kinakatakutan ng marami ay baka malahukan ng mga terrorist. Kaya na-elevate na sa Anti-Terrorism Council, etc. Pilidad na hindi naman dapat mangyari kasi na-vet na po yun bago dalhin dito.
Correct. Ayan ang tama, Senator. Kaya nga lahat ng ating mga security agencies ay tinatanong ng DFA dahil they also will have to give their comments kung anong tingin nila. Pero yan ang sabi sa atin ng mga Amerikano na they will be vetted first, they will be double-checked before they come to the Philippines, and then again through processing.
Madam Chair, if I may be allowed to express my personal sentiment, I don't see anything wrong here. Sa tingin ko po, kung talagang na-vet ito, nagkaroon lang ng konting hype, stereotyping, bordering on discrimination. Na siguro naman mabubuting tao yung iba. Yung mga FW po natin nasa iba't ibang bansa, tinatanggap naman po yun. Kasasabi ko lang, merong 33 na Filipinos pa sa Kabul. So siguro kung masasala po ito, wala tayong gastos, nasa secured na lugar, nasa isang isla. I think, Madam Chair, we have abided and complied fully with all our international humanitarian commitments, including the possible erasure of what they term as quote-unquote human rights records of our country. Malinis na ho tayo dito. We're getting here with clean hands. Tinulungan po natin yung mga tao na wala namang mga kasalanan. Details will be laid down. But yun lang po yung sentiments ko, Madam Chair. But yes, ang mali lang po dito siguro yung proseso shrouded in non-transparency manner, not revealed to the country, not full explained. Siguro DFA ang dapat managot yan. Pero yung mga Afghans, wala po silang kasalanan. Salamat po, Madam Chair.
Maraming salamat, Senator Tolentino. Ngunit, ang ating tinatanong ngayon, kung bakit ipapadala ng Amerika ang kanilang mga dating empleyado sa ating bansa. Wala naman tayong kinalaman. Dito, hindi ba nila tayo binigyan ng dahilan? What reason was given by the U.S. for making the aforementioned request, if any? Ambassador Romualdez, Secretary Manalo, and as mentioned by Senator Tolentino, are they in fact refugees? What is the understanding of the DOJ, the DFA, and the BI of the term refugee? Ambassador Romualdez has explicitly stated these are not refugees. They are former Afghan employees of the U.S. government. I need clarification po. Secretary Manalo, Ambassador Romualdez, please respond and lend us light here. Secretary Teodoro is shaking his head. Would you like to both in, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Your Honor. Technically, they're not refugees because basically they're not displaced. They're in their homeland right now. They have not applied for political asylum or any other thing. They're not on extraterritorial jurisdiction. My understanding is that their visas for the United States shall be processed within this country because of administrative difficulties of the U.S. government, because of their bureaucracy in conducting any processing, but they are not refugees as of this time. They may become refugees
that is correct.
Their visas are denied. And they are not repatriated.
Not allowed to be repatriated.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, I'm in full agreement. I think they are not refugees, as rightly pointed out by Ambassador Babes Romualdez. Is that correct, Ambassador? Was your statement regarding the fact that these are not refugees we are speaking of, and there is no doubt that the Philippines upholds and takes pride in our history of giving succor and refuge to international refugees. Ambassador Romualdez, please. These are not refugees.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, absolutely correct, Madam Chair. They are not refugees. They are employees or former employees of the U.S. government, and they're asking us if we could help them in processing them, precisely as pointed out by Secretary Teodoro, that it is a matter of administrative in nature.
Thank you. That being the case, I get affirmation as well from DFA Legal that they are not refugees. That is correct? Okay, if that is the status of these individuals, what is the basis, therefore, of the executive branch of government for admitting them into the Philippines under Section 47 of Commonwealth Act 613 on the power of the President to admit aliens for humanitarian reasons, expressly referring only to refugees? Yes, Secretary Manalo, please. What is the basis, since they clearly are not refugees, they cannot be accommodated under Section 47 of the Commonwealth Act?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In fact, the notion as we understood it from the concept note of the United States is there's no intention to leave them here in the Philippines. They're only going to use the Philippines as a temporary site where they're processing for their eventual trip to the United States. provided they pass all the vetting. And the U.S. In our talks has also assured us, if in case we agree, that they would ensure that none of the SIV applicants would to seek refugee status. So this would only be, in effect, a temporary situation. And if I could just...
Given the extraordinary circumstances, and we appreciate the emergency concern, the worry is, what shall be their status while they remain in the Philippines? Will they be non-immigrants or immigrants? What kind of Philippine visa will they be given? Under what treaty will their rights and obligations be governed? The problem is that the special immigrants visa has been promised in 2 weeks. The reality is that we are also aware that they could come as late as 59 days. In the United States, 77,000 continue to wait for their visas for periods longer than 4 years. May we have clarity on their status while they remain in the Philippines?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this case, the Afghan nationals who would be coming here are, in fact, all Afghan nationals are listed as Category A. In other words, restricted nationals who are required to apply for a visa in the Philippines. And normally we would give them up to 30 to 59 days.
So sorry, what will they be again? Non-immigrant, immigrant?
Non-immigrant.
So non-immigrant. So klaro yan, non-immigrant. Okay. And under which treaty are we governing the rights and obligations? Non-immigrant sa ilalim ng alin?
Okay. I'll have to consult on that, Madam Chair. Which treaty?
Madam Chair, we had a meeting.
Yes, Secretary.
On Monday with the undersecretaries of the DOJ and Undersecretary Lazaro and Undersecretary Vasquez. Actually, the major problem here really is an immigration problem and a legal problem. And so I think if the DOJ is already prepared, because they still have to come out, we have requested them finally for an opinion on the potential status of these people and the problems in case or the way forward in case their SIVs are denied. To date, Madam Chair, we are still waiting for the opinion. It was only formalized last week that the DFA shall be the lead agency in our conference, person-to-person conference. And we are very sensitive to the issues raised by the chairperson that this not being per se a human...
Non-immigrants and immigrants insofar as regulations, restrictions, and their freedom of movement is concerned. So what would be off the top of our heads the status if they were non-immigrants? They would be granted freedom of mobility while they are waiting, as they are in the National Convention Center in Arlington, Virginia, as we're well aware. Or as non-immigrants, will they be confined to a single space, apparently in New Clark City? Is that the consideration? What other distinctions do you think are important? I believe that the NBI is deeply concerned about the security permutations in as much as they would impact on our own public safety.
Madam Chair, if I may be
Yes, Secretary, please.
To answer, even the housing is still under consideration. We also do not want them to be housed as if they were detainees, which is the furthest thing from the image we want to portray. And keeping them for an extended period of time within a confined environment, particularly with their children involved, will not only complicate their physical liberty, but the end state of their mental health and wellness too. That is why, Madam...
There's also, Secretary, sorry to butt in, but actually, there's also the consideration that they'll be coming back and forth to apply for their special immigrant visa from New Clark City and all the provinces involved, going towards the U.S. Embassy in Metro Manila. Is that our understanding?
Madam Chair, insofar
Because that
as
is what is stated so far in the brief.
No, Madam Chair. As far as the informal discussions between us last week is that there will all the services from the processing to their medical care shall be done on site.
This is not medical care. I think this has to do with their visa application.
Even then, Madam Chair, the U.S. Embassy has to place extension services.
Parang iba yung sinabi ng DFA. Ang sabi ng DFA, mag-a-apply pa sila sa consular offices ng US Embassy. Wala dun sa Clark. Pabalik-balik sila. Kaya yung sinasabing confined to a certain space, hindi realidad yun. Yes, Secretary Manalo. Although NBI is recommending, according to their briefer, I hope I quote you right, na sana magpadala ng visa, special visa officer na lamang dun sa lugar, imbes na ganito. Yes, Secretary Manalo, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, when we referred to the U.S. Embassy, etc. here, that is the U.S. proposal. And we still have to react to that. And I think Secretary Teodoro, after we talked, felt that we feel perhaps that this should not be the arrangement. But the U.S. proposal, at least in their concept note, in that the applicants would visit the U.S. Embassy here in Manila for a visa interview, and then an embassy-identified hospital for medical evaluation for the actual issuance of U.S. visa. That is the U.S. suggestion.
Yes, that's the American suggestion.
We are not necessarily in agreement with that.
I understand. The reason, of course, is that until October of last year, in the National Convention Center of Virginia, where they were actually being processed, they could leave the facility at any time, were not considered prisoners by any means, and could therefore have freedom of mobility. Is that the same thing we're suggesting? And have we consulted New Clark City, Tarlac, for example, Pampanga, Subic, and the rest of the ramparts? Yes, Secretary Teodoro, please.
Madam Chair, we have not proceeded to that extent as far as I know. And if there will be, insofar as the Department of Defense and perhaps even our fellow security sector officials, the least amount of area they can travel from and to would be naturally physically better for us. Now, the optics of this may be different, but the least amount of travel. However, we have not discussed in thorough detail a definite site where this will be. And we definitely have to consult with the officials involved in the areas, just like we have when we apply for an ECC, for that matter, Madam Chair.
Yes, I'm just curious why there's been a change in the United States. Bakit ayaw na nila tanggapin yung mga Afghan doon sa National Convention sa Arlington? Napakarain na nung dumaan doon. Ba't biglang nagbago? At biglang tayo na ang kinakatukan?
Well, actually, they're really, the fact is that there are quite a number of them. And as you said, they have that here in Virginia. Pero the main reason why they're also asking other countries, we're not the only one, by the way. There are other countries. I think Germany is also being asked. They also had a processing center in Qatar, and from what I understand, also in Albania. Is because there's just so many of them that they would like to be able to do it quickly as possible, because they have a timeline, I suppose, and that's the reason why we're being asked as an ally of the United States. We are one of a number of countries that they have requested if they could use it. They use the country for the processing of these Afghan nationals that work with the United States government.
Yes, Ambassador, you say there are just too many Afghans. We're talking about tens of thousands, because we have heard that 25,000 were already processed through UAE, 10,000 in Qatar. You now mentioned Germany and Albania. Are there tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions? Is there a projected number to this enormous migration?
the number that we received was around 50,000 that are still for process.
50,000.
Yes, this includes government people who work with the U.S. government and their families.
Pero kung 50,000, yun din ang hinihingi sa Pilipinas. You mean to say 100%, yung buong 50,000, lahat babagsak sa Pilipinas?
Hindi naman.
Bakit na huminto yung UAE at yung Qatar? Ba't sila huminto? Bakit huminto yung US? Dati naman pinoprocess doon, nakatenga pa, 77,400. Bakit tumigil ang US? Bakit sila tumigil? Bakit bigla Pilipinas ang naisip?
Well, hindi naman naisip. Ang pagkalam namin, they were asking other countries, and the Philippines was one of them because of the fact that we have this relationship with the United States. We're an ally, so they thought the Philippines could be a place where we could allow them to process their special immigrant visas.
The reason I ask, sir, is that UAE and Qatar are obvious processing areas because of their distance. And they're already doing this, 25,000 and 10,000. Why did they stop? Kung 50,000 na lang ang butal, kayang-kaya na nila idagdag doon. Nagkakaintindihan sila. Magkapareho sila sa kinakain, sa gawi, sa iba't ibang paninindigan at paniwala.
Well, pwede natin itanong sa kanila kung bakit biglang tinigil. Pero ang pagkalam ko, humingi sila ng tulong sa atin kung pwede nila i-process yung kanilang mga government employee, yung nagtrabaho sa kanila dito sa Pilipinas. As one of the many countries that they're asking for this.
Thank you. Yes, I'm not unwilling to help. Like all Filipinos, we have an open arms policy to all refugees throughout the world at any time. However, it appears to me that we are an unlikely candidate simply because napakalayo po natin. Parang inilalayo natin sila lalo, samantalang meron ng existing. Unang-una, kung babagsak rin sila sa US, bakit hindi nga ituloy-tuloy na lamang yung nandyan sa Virginia? Nahinto ba since Washington DC is clearly by Virginia? Have they stopped processing people in the National Convention Center, please?
I don't think so. I think they're still processing a number of them as of now.
I see, because I understand from press releases that with the Operation Allies Refuge, Operation Allies Welcome, and the other enduring welcome efforts of the United States, the Biden administration announced that Afghan nationals in October 1 of 2022 will no longer be able to enter the U.S. under the Humanitarian Parole Authority. So tinigil sa US, samantalang ito empleyado ng US. Bakit tayo ang magiging sangkalan? Yun lang ang tanong ko.
Well, pwede natin itanong sa kanila kung bakit sa atin na. Pero as I said, isa tayo sa mga ibang mga bayan na humingi sila ng tulong kung pwede idaan doon bago nila dalhin sa Amerika.
Would you know if Thailand, our good neighbor and ASEAN partner, which is a treaty ally of the United States, has been requested by the United States to process Afghan employees as well?
I am not sure, Madam Chair.
I have been told that no request was ever made to Thailand. Why only the Philippines?
Well, as I said, they approached us in October and we said that we will consider it and we're going to study the matter. But we have not asked them why you picked us. The only reason they told us is because they felt that the Philippines was an ally that they could ask this particular favor, perhaps if you want to call it that. And they have brought it up to the highest levels in our government, including the president.
Okay, so if the U.S. is unable or unwilling to temporarily house their Afghan employees in U.S. soil, why don't they go to U.S. territories such as Guam, Puerto Rico, Guantanamo? Secretary Manalo, you're raising your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought I would just say a few words on this issue on the why the U.S. might have approached us. Of course, we can only surmise, but what I gather is aside from being a partner and a treaty ally, I think they also are aware of our long tradition of providing humanitarian assistance. So that's why they have approached us. On the United States is actually these are SIV applicants and not applying for refugees. I mean, they're not refugees as such. And as we understood from the United States, their laws require that this category, SIV applicants, have to be processed in third countries, not in the United States. So perhaps those could be the reasons why. In fact, that's one of the reasons why they approached us on this.
Pero magulo rin sa atin yan, di ba? Kasi under our immigration rules, and the BI is here to confirm, Norman, please, Afghan nationals are Category 1 nationals. They should first obtain Philippine visa before entry in Islamabad. Isn't that correct? So that puts into question their status if they remain in the Philippines as well. So that also puts into question our ability to impose our laws on all those in our territory. And we'll sacrifice all that simply because we'd like to accommodate a favor that could probably be better served elsewhere. Just a question.
That's why we have to be very clear if we were to accede to this, that our laws would be followed. And if they have a stay of 30 to 59 days, for example, in accordance with our Category A, then we would have to apply that strictly, and we would have to make that very clear to the United States that they could not stay longer than they are allowed according to Philippine law because of their specific category. And that's the point we would, if we ever get into negotiations with the U.S. formal, we would have to insist on these points.
Yes, Secretary, this is a real problem because of the change in strategy in the United States and the refusal now to extend humanitarian parole authorities. We are not certain they will actually receive their special immigrant visas. And the delay, as we know, has been tremendous and admitted by the Americans themselves. Sadly, unfortunately, the Humanitarian Parole Authority is one that myself and my family utilize, so I'm inordinately familiar with the same. It guarantees no residence, it guarantees no rights or any other abilities under that status, nor any immigrant or other privileges. So it's not something I would wish on anyone. Okay. There's a further question. You said that rigorous security vetting has already been done by the United States government. What about the Philippine government? Are we able to undertake rigorous security vetting and background checks? Will we be able to go over their employment records and all their family details from Islamabad through our very meager embassy deployment out there that covers Kabul at this point?
Madam Chair,
Secretary Teodoro, please.
If the category would be former U.S. government employees, then the job is much easier because they would have been vetted in the first place before they would have been hired. Admittedly, there are problems with their family members, if ever, who were not vetted. And that is one of the issues that we would want to go through. What kind of vetting did they go through in the first place? Which I personally, I wonder if the other agencies, what standard they will apply.
Yes, the NBI has questioned that. So have some papers from the PNP questioning our ability to actually vet the incoming Afghans.
What we are certain, Madam Chair, is once they arrive in country, then we can, of course, take precautions as to what they may do. Because, for example, like even in voice calls or whatnot, we can have them sign certain waivers, like when you answer a call center, this phone call is being recorded for your protection, or even like a company email or a Senate email for that matter. However, insofar as their backgrounds are concerned, there definitely will be some gaps. However, insofar as the NSC position is, depending on the arrangements made for their stay here, the number of those that will be agreed upon, the risk is low.
Yes, certainly. We appreciate your anxiety and we share the NBI, the PNP, the AFP's concern, as well as the anti-terror group's concern that we simply do not have sufficient information and capability to get background checks on all of them. And even if you confine them to quarters and treat them almost as immobile prisoners, the reality is there are IT and other communications technologies available. The other consideration is NBI has mentioned the presence of sleepers among Afghan applicants as being highly probable, that the presence of SIV applicants could make the Philippines a target for Taliban and its splinter groups, and so on. Is that a reality? We so far do not recognize the Taliban government in Afghanistan, although we have had diplomatic relations with the country for a long while now. What exactly do we anticipate? NBI, perhaps, since you are very concerned about the security aspect and submitted an early paper on the same.
Yes, Madam Chair. I think the apprehension we noted is that they may have sympathizers from the southern Philippines, from our Muslim brothers. So that is a possibility, Madam Chair.
Yes,
because they are given also the opportunity to for this some terrorists to travel, and that is a problem of records checking, and it will pose some security concern later on.
Yes, quite apart from the background of these Afghans, will it be a source of propaganda and extremist narrative in pro-Taliban and Al-Qaeda groups, other sympathizers that we are all fully aware of that exist in our Muslim South?
Certainly, Madam Chair, this could be used as a propaganda, and it could also, since our apprehension is about the sleepers, they could always be activated, and it will have an impact as far as revival of some activities in the South.
Yes, the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos are very concerned about peace in Mindanao. Attorney Guro, you expressed some doubt about this effort.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The same sentiments we raised during the June 7, we are not particularly concerned about the infiltration or the sleepers among these coming Afghanistan, but more of being a target of an attack. As we all know, just recently, this Wednesday, an incident happened in Marawi again concerning the same group who caused the Marawi siege. So apparently they're regrouping, and they're growing in numbers because of the continuous problems in Marawi that up until now, most of these affected by the Marawi siege were not yet, they have not returned to their homeland or to their homes. So these are the concerns for the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos, because if their mobility will not be limited, and even if their mobility will be limited, these people from the south or these sympathizers of the ISIS-inspired group can easily, travel to Luzon. And that is the concern, actually. We agree with the Security Council that as far as the infiltration of, Taliban inspired from this Afghanistan, that is very slim. But for the security concerns of those within the Philippines already, like the sympathizers of these leftist groups.
Yes, that seems very obvious, right? Yes, I think doesn't the fact that the U.S. no longer wants to house these foreigners in safe havens within territorial United States raise concerns for us? They're claiming that they're very low risk security, that highly vetted groups will be the only ones coming, and that the SIV is assured, and yet they don't want them. Doesn't this raise concerns on the background and character of these individuals? Ayaw nga ng empleyado ng employer. Ayaw ng employer kunin yung dating empleyado. Bakit tayo ang kukuha ng ba? Sila ayaw. Ba't ganun? Walang sasagot? Secretary Manalo, no, just playing devil's advocate, and well, it seems logical. Sila yung employer, ayaw nila dun sa mga empleyado nila, ayaw nilang kunin. Ba't tayo kukuha? Wala naman tayong kinalaman dyan, hindi natin kilala, hindi natin kaano-ano. Naaawa tayo, pero maawa muna tayo sa sarili natin. Yes po. Yes. Ambassador Babes, Jinggoy.
Well, actually, Madam Chair, sinabi na nga ni Secretary Manalo, which itong ang special immigrant visa, kailangan talaga, bago sila makapasok sa Amerika, ipoprocess sa labas. Iba yung refugee status kaysa dito sa special immigrant visa. Kasi the minute they approve that, talagang they can come to the United States, work here, live here, and this is going to be their new home. Yun ang pagkaalam namin sa special immigrant visa.
Yes, tamo pa. Kaya dun sa interagency meeting June 7, pati DOT, kasama na rin DepEd. Ibig sabihin, 4 years of school. Kasi 4 years average yung application ng SIV. Mag-i-eskwela pa ba yan? Elementary at high school, di ba? Kasi pinatawag kayo. Sino-sino pa pinatawag? DICT, DOST. Lahat tinawag di ba? So, pang matagalan yan, hindi yan 2 weeks na sinasabi ipoprocess. Senator Jinggoy, nagtaas po kayo ng kamay. Nakamute po, Senator Jinggoy. Nakamute ka. Ay, Senator Jinggoy, did you raise your hand? Nakamute ka pa. Ayun.